Resuming debate. Sénatrice Saint-Germain.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Dear colleagues, I rise today to join the debate on what I consider to be a crucial discussion regarding the ability of the Senate to fulfill its constitutional duty of sober second thought. I want to thank Senator Tanis for putting forward this discussion. I do so as an independent senator and not as ISG facilitator. This is a disclaimer, a preemptive move. I want to share my view on this issue, knowing very well that some of my ISG colleagues will agree and some will disagree. This plurality of opinion and expertise paired with mutual respect is, I believe, one of the strengths of our group. Allow me first to speak to the context surrounding this motion and on the existing tools we currently have at our disposal. I will also share my thoughts more precisely on the context of the motion that aims to solve the problem that we often face nearing the end of a session or before rising for the winter and summer recess, the rush for, if not the inability to, properly study and improve bills coming late to the Senate. I believe we can all agree that the Senate is the master of its own destiny. We should not accept nor fold in the face of pressure from the government or the House of Commons that would prevent us from fulfilling our role as senators. On this, I concur with Senator Tanis. However, I believe we have now, within our rules, the power and the ability to provide our sober second thought while working in a complementary way with the elected House, as the Canadian public expects us to do. Let me continue by citing some of the tools that we have at our disposal. We have the ability to do pre-studies on bills that we know will arrive late for our consideration in accordance with Rule 10.11.1. This practice is beneficial because it allows us to be ready for debate and eventually amendments when the bills arrive in circumstances requiring a diligent and timely response. We also have, in exceptional circumstances, a simple yet effective option, sitting for a longer amount of time. When it comes down to it, the onus to properly study a bill is on us. Notably, there are no rules that say we must adjourn 3 days after the other place. So then, why not sit for 1 week, 2 weeks, or any amount of time that is needed to complete the work Canadians expect us to do? Bills do not arrive in the Senate with an expiry date, after all. Now, I know some of my colleagues will argue that sitting longer would not solve the issue, that we could not amend bills while the House is adjourned. But I see it differently. Let's remember, the Senate is the master of its own destiny. There is nothing preventing us from amending these late arriving bills and sending them back to the other place. Actually, I agree generally with the notion that the House bad planning is not the Senate's emergency, as stated by the leader of the Canadian Senators Group. However, it is up to senators to express the collective and individual will to sit on days when they do not wish to and stay later than what is indicated on proposed sitting calendars in order to achieve the goal of having thorough examination of pieces of government legislation. I want to address the question surrounding the notion of sending a Senate amendment piece of government legislation back to an adjourned House of Commons. Doing this is simply not an ISG problem, a CPC problem, a CSG or PSG problem. It is, in fact, not a Senate problem at all. This is a government of the day problem. This is a House of Commons problem, and it is their problem to address it if the situation arises. We shall keep in mind that the Speaker of the House of Commons has the authority to recall MPs during those break periods in accordance with Rule 28(3) of the Standing Orders of the other place. As for us, we would only be fulfilling our constitutional duty, and frankly, colleagues, I do not believe that we shall then have to apologize for doing the collective job, our collective job in keeping the government to account. Consequently, I also wish to address Senator Tanno's statement made in his speech of February 8 that, and I quote him, CSG senators will not grant leave to facilitate or waive our rules on the passage of any legislation anymore, end of quote. While I agree that waiving leave of the Senate is an important tool at our disposal and that the practice of granting leave has been vastly used, maybe overused in this pandemic period, I strongly disagree with this Pavlovian response to deny leave. It doesn't mean because of some past abuses that there is no merit in granting leave to some urgent issue that would, if legislation is adopted swiftly, greatly benefit Canadians. For example, would any colleague who cares for public interest really be comfortable with denying leave on an urgent supply bill, even in a case where that bill had been thoroughly studied by our own expert senators at the National Finance Committee? I don't believe so. Allow me to use the example of Bill C-10, an act for granting to Her Majesty certain sums of money for the federal public administration for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2020, passed in one day in the 43rd Parliament on March 13, 2020, at the very beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. We passed C-10 with leave of the Senate to provide important benefits to Canadian citizens and enterprises for the difficult times ahead. It was necessary at the time to meet the needs of Canadians, and it may still be necessary in the future. While in the worst peaks of this pandemic, we had the duty to act timely in the best public interest. This is not a nuance, colleagues. It is the real politic we were then in. Hopefully, the worst of the COVID-19 pandemic is behind us, but we are not immune to tragedies or natural disasters that would require urgent action and approval. To further highlight the negative effects of this dogmatic approach and even ill-conceived sophistry, I would like to refer to the debate we had recently on the Emergencies Act. The choice of some of our colleagues, while totally valid within our rules, to deny leave on a request to waive the usual one-day notice and expedite the debate, ended up slowing down our work and ensuring that many senators, 16 for the ISG alone, were in the end not able to rise and speak to this vital issue. Had this permission been granted, we could have debated on the Friday and on the following Monday. And what about Bill C-6, an act to amend the criminal code banning the practice of conversion therapy? It was tabled in late June 2021 to the Senate, but we were not able to pass that bill because leave was then denied for us to do a pre-study. That bill had close to unanimous support in the chamber and was urgently requested by independent experts and the LGBTQ community. Furthermore, it was adopted with leave of the Senate in this new legislature. So why then needlessly blocking its pre-study last summer? I must say, I think those examples prove the counterproductive nature of this practice and are not in line with the ideal of legislating in the best public interest. It is, furthermore, proof that Motion 13 is superfluous. Since the opening of this 44th Parliament, Senator Tanno himself has used almost systematically our rules to deny leave and thus preventing the Senate from being, quote, rushed by the government or by the other place. I do not agree with the terms of the debate as expressed in the third point of the motion. Limiting debate time to 20 minutes and for 5 minutes to each senator would mean that only 4 could speak up during debate. I feel it would be greatly unjust, let aside the superficiality of this approach. Between the recognized groups, the Conservative caucus, the non-affiliated senator, and the government representatives, somebody is assured to go unrepresented. For my own group, the ISG, the option would not be viable. Even in the case where one of our members should rise and speak to the urgency of the bill, it would be impossible for this senator to do so as a spokesperson or representative for the group. Other ISG senators could disagree and feel unrepresented in the debate. I am sure many of my colleagues from other groups will feel the same way. This approach is simply not aligned with the realities of the contemporary Senate. I must, however, salute Senator Tanus on his openness to suggestions and improvements which demonstrate his long-standing and unwavering dedication to the efficiency of the Senate. Colleagues, the motion before us today is a political statement, a demonstration of bravado in response to frustration from the perceived dismissiveness of the other place, which I share, but it is not necessarily, nor is it substantiated if we take a closer look at the rules and if we have the collective courage to apply them properly in combination with a good planification of our parliamentary work. It is, moreover, only a temporary solution, considering it would only be sessional order and not amending any of our rules. It is so unsubstantiated that, for instance, the government representative in the Senate has not, neither in the last parliament nor in this new one, used the pressure tool that is time allocation. Instead, he has sought to build consensus amongst senators. We must keep working in this collegial way. I will now conclude, hoping that Senator Tanus will still be my friend, with the wise words of a former senator, the late Michael Pitfield, taken from the foreword of the book Protecting Canadian Democracy, The Senate You Never Knew. I quote former Senator Pitfield, "Long-standing experience in public administration has taught me to approach anything as challenging as Senate reform with prudence and reserve of humility." End of quote. Those wise words shall inspire us to take our distances from group branding and political bravado. Rather than safeguarding the Senate's sober second thought, this motion would lead us to the denial of the various options we are already provided with by our rules and by the rules of the other place. Actually, it would simply delay our parliamentary works, both in the chamber and in committees, at the detriment of the timeliness required in times of need. This is why I will not support this motion.